Hey, hello everyone. I'm Todd Christian. Thanks everyone for making time today. We're excited to be here and share a little bit of knowledge here. Most of you are in fields like this, so you understand with more than 30 people, managing mute is a total pain. So we'll be using the Q&A feature today for all of our interactions. So if you have comments, questions, pop it in there in the Q&A feature, and Rebecca and Reed and will be doing our best to respond. Great to have so much participation today. You know, this is a really interesting topic. Our whole team seems to be getting asked more and more how to help make the matrix work. It seems to be more and more common in the workplace today that we've got these, multi-reporting relationships where we're trying to balance the different needs of the organization. So I think this is a really timely topic, and we're looking forward to sharing a little bit of what we know and what we've experienced here today. All right. So who are we at AlignOrg? So we focus on doing this kind of work. We call it organizational alignment, right? So we start with making sure that your organization is clear about how they differentiate in the market, knowing where you are today relative to where you want to be, and then figuring out a path to get there. And a lot of that is this organization design work, organizational alignment work, and it has to be strongly supported by knowing the right change management and the leadership alignment work that has to be done in order to get the right result that we're looking for. So that's a little bit who we are. I see somebody's got a question up there already. Yes, we will be sharing our slides after this. So most of our work, about 80% of our work, is actually doing projects. So that's with a client who calls us and says, hey, can you help us out, right? And we bring in our team. It's usually a handful of us, including Rebecca and Reed, who are doing the facilitation, helping get it set up for success, and then managing the delivery of the project. And about 20% of our work is helping organizations build their own capabilities at doing this. So years ago, that was actually how I got connected to AlignOrg. Was I was a client when I worked at Lowe's and hired AlignOrg to help us build our internal capabilities because we had so much organizational alignment work that was going on back in the early 2010s. Interestingly, we've still continued work. We actually had a super busy year last year. It might have been our busiest year ever, despite COVID. And it's because we figured out how to pivot to do some virtual delivery. We're starting to get back on site, but most of our work has been happening virtually during COVID. And we continue to get called back. So I take that as a good sign, right? We've had the opportunity to work with a lot of excellent organizations over the years. Reed on the call here is one of our co-founders. How long have you been doing this, Reed?
Oh, a couple of decades.
Yeah. So really privileged to get all these experiences from some really significant companies. So here's what we're going to do in the hour that we've got. This is our agenda. I'm going to cover a little bit about the organization design model and what is a matrix, or what are the dimensions of a matrix. Reed is going to cover our primary causes of failure, what it is that we see that gets in the way, and then also what those kind of strategic and operational level matrix issues are and what we can do about them to help them work. And then Rebecca is going to talk about leadership requirements to really make the matrix work. So that's the plan. We'll do a little bit of application and reflection at the end. All right, fasten your seatbelts. So our organization design model and how we think about organization design or organization alignment, start with the end in mind. If you go all the way to the end there on the left, you see it says results. It's really clear that every organization has to know what results they're trying to achieve, or you're not going to get there, right? So we start with the end in mind, getting clear about the results. And then the process that we follow from left to right here, as we think about what out in the environment are things we're going to have to react to? What in the internal environment are things that we're going to have to tweak or tune or change? So kind of setting some of those internal requirements based on what we're seeing out there with the organization. And then we move through this map of clarifying the strategy, getting clear about capabilities, organizational capabilities, right? The ability to get something done. And then aligning the choices that we make, whether it's process or structure or metrics, whatnot. So the way that we think about this is strategy clarification, macro alignment. If you hear us kind of talking in code or inside baseball, macro alignment, and then micro alignment or micro design, getting all those choices aligned. We use a model that we call the cube model. So if you think about a Rubik's Cube, you're not done if you just solve one side, right? You solve one side of a Rubik's Cube, you've only solved a fraction of the puzzle. And actually it's easier to do that than solve multiple sides, right? And structure is only one side of it. A lot of leaders, unfortunately, go right to structure. That's what they think about. But what we're saying here is you really need to get all of those sides of the cube aligned and make sure that it's aligned at the very center around the strategy that you're trying to achieve. We actually have a whole book about this, Mastering the Cube. It's out there, you can find it. And if you want to know more, just reach out to one of us afterwards. But I think you'll recognize this, the core elements of the cube model is starting with the work, then getting clear about the structure, right? So how is the work organized? How is it governed? Who has decision-making authority? Getting clear about the information and metrics. So what are we measuring and how does the information flow around the organization? Making sure that we've got aligned people and rewards, right? So what kind of people do we need? What kind of incentives do we need? How are they developed? How are they selected? There's a side in here called continuous improvement. And we often find organizations don't think enough about that. Like what's the mechanism to making sure there's continuous renewal? And then the last side on there you see is leadership and culture. So leadership and culture can either reinforce or really undermine all the other choices that we make. So we think it's really deliberate to call it out and make sure that people are clear about the leadership and culture that we want to create. Okay. So, one of the things that we find ourselves saying often, and you'll get this if you think about your own personal life, is like every design's got trade-offs, right? The key is to choose the set of trade-offs that you want, right? So if you think about balancing anything, right, you've probably heard about like the discipline of market leaders. You can be excellent at product leadership, you can have lowest total cost, you can have the highest customer intimacy, but when you choose one of those things, you're not going to be as good at the others, right? So everything has got downsides or trade-offs. And so we want to figure out how to manage those downsides or trade-offs. So multi-reporting or matrix reporting is a design choice that you can make, and there are trade-offs for it. But what is it, right? It's being accountable to 2 or more managers. I think it's fairly common out there for most of us, particularly like who have like HR backgrounds, to understand matrix as like, hey, I've got I report into HR, and I also have the people that I'm supporting, right? So it's a function, another function or department or geography, whatever it is, business unit. So people kind of get their minds around that pretty easily. But we've seen around the world, we've got 3 and 4 level matrices where there are multiple direct reports or multiple managers that we're dealing with. So what does that look like? I've got myself one slide ahead. Potential benefits and downsides. We were just talking about this. One of the things that's really good about a matrix is the level of integration you can get. So balancing different points of view, right? So I've got the HR perspective, I got the business unit perspective. I don't want to go completely native, but I also don't want to be just the HR police, right? So that's one of the real benefits that you can see there. We also can see that further down the list here, if you have a really large organization, it's helpful to be able to have a view of the whole thing, right? So if you're the chief legal officer or you're the head of engineering or whatever else, being able to get a view of all the costs of the organization and what's possible to be pooled or shared can really get you some lift. So there's a lot of things and the potential benefits there of why you're seeing organizations go to matrix. The other thing that you're always seeing more and more of today is having to deal with geography, particularly if you're talking about global companies, right? You're not going to have the same people be able to support Asia as you are probably the Americas. So there's another dimension there that people are having to consider or integrate. Now, the downside is it does take more time. It does take more time and energy, right? So now I have an increased number of direct reports in a way, right? Because I've got now some matrix direct reports that are shared with another function. So there's increased time for those conversations, and not only with my direct reports, but also with my peer over there who is also sharing this direct report for us to get on the same page and make sure we're aligned. We're just going to talk a bit about that later. Decision-making authority. We got to be crystal clear about that. That's a downside, right? That can get in the way if we're not clear about which manager in the matrix has particular decision-making authority. So those are some of the benefits and the risks that we have to mitigate when we think about managing in the matrix. This is an interesting slide here. So there's a lot on here, but if you think about, on one hand, reporting into a functional organization, and on the other hand, reporting into a product or line organization or any other dimension, geography, product, customer, doesn't matter, channel. There's some place on the spectrum of like which boss of mine has more leverage, right? Or which one do I have the solid line to, and which one do I have the dotted line to? And so that's what this chart is representing. You know, at the very ends of it, it doesn't make sense to have any kind of formal matrix decision making, right? You know, if I really report into the functional organization, but I'm assigned to some other folks, but really my primary accountability is running the function, then I'm going to get some feedback in the process from that dotted line manager, but we don't really have to make it too formal. And the same thing on the other end. If I'm deployed out there and I'm a resource out there in the product or the line organization, I don't need a lot of balance or a lot of formality to a matrix reporting relationship. But when we get towards the middle here, this is where it makes sense to have solid and dotted reporting lines, where I'm clear that Rebecca is my primary boss and has, you know, whatever, 2/3 of my decision-making authority, and Reed has 1/3, right? We got to be clear about that. Which one is the kind of home for me? Which one's accountable for my development? Who's accountable for kind of managing my performance and the compensation, all those kinds of things. So that could go either way. But what we found also is the middle is really ineffective. It is just not clear. So it's a little danger zone there, right in the center. Dual authority. We haven't seen that work. It's not clear, and it just gets people in trouble. So at any rate, it's good lessons to be thinking about is the matrix isn't always right, and where you put a person in the matrix is really important to be thinking about. So let's get into the dimensions of the matrix.